Hello world. I'm Robin Catling and this is Write On. Join me in my author journey as I delve into the craft of writing, bringing you tools, tips and lessons learned the hard way so you don't have to. Conventions of the fantasy genre. No elves, no dragons. Does that mean I'm ignoring the conventions of the fantasy genre? Not necessarily. The fantasy genre is an increasingly broad church. The easily mocked Wikipedia has one of the better definitions. Fantasy is a genre of speculative fiction involving magical elements, typically set in a fictional universe and sometimes inspired by mythology and folklore. It's getting more and more difficult to define what is pure fantasy, as the genres of speculative fiction merge and overlap. Science fiction and horror bleed into fantasy, bringing science and supernatural themes. The subgenres of fantasy include urban settings, action-adventure, and romance. Authors freely mash up and remix genres as easily as pop music. While you can still find plenty of epic adventure, there's now literary fantasy, grimdark fantasy, fantasy romance, eco-fantasy, and dozens of subgenres besides. Moreover, can we distinguish conventions from tropes? Conventional wisdom. If we try to distill some conventions of the fantasy genre, we find fantasy stories usually contain many of the following: a battle of good versus evil, with capital letters of course, fantastical creatures, action, and epic themes. Additional elements often include forbidden romance, witches and warlocks, elves and men, queens and soldiers. Coming of age, rebellion against society or social hierarchy, redemption, revenge, and sacrifice. Richness and colour is often provided by fantastical races, words, languages, magic systems, fantastical settings and extensive world building, a large cast of, mostly complex, supporting characters, a central conflict or, the favourite, the quest, and unique power structures and or systems of government. It's often this last list that defines a novel as fantasy or some other speculative genre, but it's difficult to hold onto these as a definitive checklist when so many young adult or YA subgenres cover the territory. Think of the vampire-werewolf horror crossover Twilight Saga, or the dystopias of Divergent and The Maze Runner. On the neighbouring border, N.K. Jemisin writes beautiful literary fantasy. And where does magical realism sit in relation to fantasy? That's a post I've tried 3 times to write without success. My way. I'm writing small-scale, low-key fantasy with epic fantasy elements, but no fantastical races, and the softest of magic systems. It ticks almost all the boxes, but it's a long way from Tolkien and G.R.R. Martin, or even Brandon Sanderson. But it's still fantasy. That's all for this time. Thanks for stopping by. You can like and subscribe to the channel, or go to robincatling.info to check out the blog.